As Shaedon Sharpe goes up and throws it down.
Shaedon Sharpe is one of, if not the most intriguing prospect in this year's NBA draft. After ending up at Kentucky a year earlier than expected, Shaedon Sharpe did not play a single game for the Wildcats. While it was expected that he would return to college basketball for the 2022-2023 season, Shaedon Sharpe decided instead to declare for the NBA draft. Sharpe has a nice combination of size for a wing as well as athleticism. At a reported 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan, Sharpe has the size to play the small forward position in the NBA. He is also rumored to have a 49-inch vertical jump, which would set the NBA draft combine record. He's somewhat shifty and has a solid first step, and his physical profile and his athleticism is terrific. The second positive for Sharpe is his creation upside. He shows flashes of being a go-to scorer with some creativity off the dribble. Combined with his physical traits and athleticism, the flashes Sharpe has shown not only attacking the rim off the dribble, but also with his pull-up jumper, including some side steps and step backs from three, is why he's ranked so highly on draft boards. The third positive is Sharpe's finishing ability. Given his athleticism and solid first step, he's able to get to the rim, and when he does, he shows some creativity in terms of contorting his body, rearranging around defenders, and finishing creative layups. He's going to be a guy who's going to threaten a poster on a rim protector, but when he's not able to get all the way to the rim, he's still able to finish. The fourth positive is Sharpe's transition play. He's a threat with the ball in his hands, pushing the pace, and he's also a threat as a lane filler and a lob target. The fifth positive for Sharpe is his defensive upside. We've talked about his solid physical profile for a wing, and part of his athletic ability is some solid lateral quickness. He's able to swivel his hips well, and his 7-foot wingspan helps him to contest shots well. Sharpe projects as a guy who could be really good on the defensive end. In terms of negatives for Sharpe, the first one is his passing and his reads. This is to be expected with somebody who hasn't even played at the college basketball level, but in order to be a guy who consistently has the ball in his hands, he needs to be better as a playmaker for others. The second negative for Sharpe is his decision making. Much like the first negative, a lot of this is due to inexperience, but Sharpe has a tendency to force some tough shots and force some passes that might not be there. The third improvement area for Sharpe is his shooting consistency. While he's shown some ample flashes of being able to hit tough three-point looks, he's still not fully consistent yet as a three-point shooter, and he has the tendency to be a bit streaky. The fourth improvement area is his defensive consistency. When Sharpe is locked in, he looks really good as a defender for the reasons that I stated in his positive section. However, he does have the tendency to lapse a little bit, and his focus can wane from time to time. This is a common theme with many prospects in this draft. The fifth and final negative is his limited sample size of high-level play. There's not a ton of footage on Shaedon Sharpe compared to some other prospects in this draft, and other top prospects have proven themselves against college competition. Now, when it comes to projecting Shaedon Sharpe's upside and potential NBA role, obviously it's all kind of wild speculation because he didn't play any college basketball. With other prospects, it's really easy to try and guess at how their game might translate because we've seen it up against other college players and it's close enough to the NBA level that you can kind of get a feel for it. But with a guy like a Shaedon Sharpe, it's obviously a lot harder. When it comes to talking about him as a player, he has a lot of upside. He might have the highest upside in this draft, but he also has a low floor because he hasn't been proven. But overall, I think he's going to be a guy who's going to pan out because if he's truly 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan, I hope he measures at the draft combine so we can see those measurements. If he truly has that size and length, plus his athleticism, it's going to be hard for him not to be at least a decent NBA player. Now, is he going to be a guy that can play off of guys, and is he going to be a role player? Can he be a knockdown, catch-and-shoot three-point shooter? I have no idea. Obviously, the best idea of him is a guy you give the ball to, and he kind of runs your offense. However, I don't think he's going to be at that point for at least 2 to 3 years. I think it's going to take a little bit of time and patience with Shaedon Sharpe and developing him. So while other top prospects have an immediate NBA role, I don't think Shaedon Sharpe's going to be seeing the same level of minutes, so I don't think you have to worry about his role from day one a whole lot. It's just, what can you turn him into? And different teams are probably going to end up with different results with their prospects based on how well they develop players and based on what they try and preach in their system. Shaedon Sharpe is a very moldable player in my opinion, and wherever he goes is going to determine who he truly becomes. Obviously, it's up to him with work ethic and how hard he grinds, and if is he able to fix some of his flaws. But if he ends up in a situation like Portland under Chauncey Billups, who develops playmaking and helps players make better reads on the court, he did the same thing with Anthony Simons, then you could see Shaedon Sharpe become more of a playmaker for others. If he ends up somewhere else, he could end up just being more of a scorer, and depending on a certain situation and how well he pans out, it could be a drastic difference between him being a guy that just plays in transition, plays for an up-tempo team, and then spaces the floor, shoots some catch-and-shoot threes, and cuts in the half court, and is used as a mover off the ball, compared to the best-case scenario where he's a guy who I could see having a ceiling of being a 25-point-per-game scorer. The size, the athleticism, as well as the flashes he's shown offensively, gives him a pretty unlimited ceiling in my opinion. There's nothing that I don't think he could figure out basketball-wise. I think he could be a good defensive player. He has the physical profile and the athletic traits to be able to do that. I think he could be a good playmaker. He hasn't really shown that, but he's still very young, and given the knack he has with the ball in his hands, I think that will be something that's coachable. I like his shooting form. I think it's very solid. It is my one concern with him off the bat is he going to be a good enough three-point shooter? Because if he's a guy that people don't have to respect at the three-point line, then he's going to have a harder time getting into the paint, getting to the rim, and driving past guys. So his three-point shooting is the most important trait for him in my opinion, because not only will that help him be a better player off the ball, but it'll open up his entire dribble drive game. But I'm not too worried about his three-point shot. It's just that if his three-point shot isn't good enough, then that's what would result in him being a bust. I just have confidence in it, and I can't even really explain why, but I think he'll be a good enough three-point shooter. Now, this is a guy that I could see going in the top 5 depending on how well he works out for teams. There's a chance that a team in the top 5 is just absolutely enamored with what this guy brings to the court and might take him over a guy like a Jaden Ivey. I wouldn't rule that out, but at this point, I think he's the consensus 5th overall pick. If he slips past that, I will be surprised, because there's not a ton of high upside players in this draft. There's a ton of high floor guys who could easily end up being role players and helping a winning team in a role off the bench, or maybe even in a starting role. However, there's not a ton of guys that you see being a potential future all-star. Shaedon Sharpe is a guy that you see being a potential future all-star. So I would be shocked if teams in the middle of the lottery passed up on this guy, given that teams in the middle of the lottery usually just want a guy that they think they can develop, is moldable, and has a high enough ceiling to potentially be an all-star, because that's what takes teams out of the lottery. In past years, there's been some winning teams that have been in the lottery. Golden State had a couple lottery picks, but they still took some high upside projects with Jonathan Kuminga and James Wiseman, so I really don't see Shaedon Sharpe falling all that much. Even if he doesn't have the best workouts, it's obvious to see the upside if you watch him, and it's a higher upside than anybody below 5 in my opinion. So Shaedon Sharpe, I think, will be the 5th overall pick. In terms of good team fits, I think Portland is a good team fit for the reasons I said, helping him get better as a playmaker and with his reads. I'd like his fit in Orlando as a small forward. If they look to move off Jonathan Isaac, he could be a good scorer for them. Indiana could use a small forward as well, especially a scorer. I think they might look to trade some of their perimeter players, and they do have, Chris Duarte, but other than that, they don't really really have a long-term high-level score, in my opinion. Tyrese Halliburton could be that, but he's more of a well-rounded Swiss Army knife type of guy. I think Indiana could really use a guy that can go out and get a bucket and handle some of the offensive responsibility from the wing position, and Shaedon Sharpe could be that for them. Shaedon Sharpe also makes sense as a starting two-guard in New Orleans next to CJ McCollum in the backcourt. Really, any team in the lottery could use a guy like this that you could play at the 2 or the 3. There's no teams in the top 10 that are set at both those positions. So there isn't really a bad fit for Shaedon Sharpe in this draft lottery. It'll be interesting to see who ends up with the 5th overall pick. It'll be one of 5 teams. It'll be Houston, Orlando, Detroit, OKC, or Indiana. But obviously teams can move up to 4 or 3 and potentially take him. They can trade up, but he's most likely going to be a member of one of those 5 teams. Anyway, that wraps up this draft profile on Shaedon Sharpe. Let me know what you think about his game down in the comment section below. Go to the channel page and click on playlists if you want to watch back previous draft profiles. I have a playlist for them to make it easy for you. And subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a like. It really does help me out. And I'm out of here. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.